Ready.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this event. I am M. Renza, the Collaborations Coordinator at the Code for All Network. Welcome to our third webinar of 2023 and the seventh session of our Civic Tech and SDGs webinar series to discuss SDG 5, gender equality. This series is about how civic tech and the UN Sustainable Development Goals are related, and how civic technology can be used to address and help us come closer to reaching these goals. Today, in collaboration with Google's Women Tech Makers program, we are commemorating International Women's Day. We'll be hearing from experts in the field who will share their insights and experiences on how technology is being used to break down barriers and advance equality for all, and how it can be used to empower communities to take an active role in achieving sustainable development. We look forward to an engaging and informative session. Thank you for joining us. If you want to read more about Civic Tech, the SDGs, and the Women Tech Makers program, there are links in the YouTube chat that go into more detail. And if you aren't familiar with who we are or what we do, you can find links in the chat to read more about us. In a nutshell, Code for All is a global network composed of civic tech organizations from around the world. And our mission is to connect these organizations so they can learn from each other, leading to a greater impact in their local communities. So, whether you're new to civic tech or the SDGs, or you're a fan of both and are curious about how these two worlds collide, you have come to the right place. Before we begin, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping items. During the session today, we'll start by hearing from each of our speakers. Following this, we will ask some questions to the panel from the audience that were shared via Twitter and Instagram by our community. If you'd like to ask any questions during this webinar, please type them into the chat window on YouTube live streaming. We'll try to address them during the conversation. And finally, a recorded version of this webinar will be available at codeforall.org and on our YouTube channel for future viewing. Now, let's get into it. Today, we're hosting our fifth session of the series, like I mentioned before, and we are extremely excited. We'd like to welcome our four excellent speakers. Adenike Aloba, who's the Program Director at DataFight. Gabriela Rosano, the Executive Director at OpenUp. Karishma Zakaula, Program Associate at Code for Pakistan. And Marissa Miodowski, the Community Coordinator at Open Heroines. I will give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves, who they are and what they do, as they give their presentations. And I'll begin with Adenike, so please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much, Ranger. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be having this conversation. I'm most excited to hear everyone else in this panel. So I'm kind of going to rush through my conversation because I'm really looking forward to hearing the work that everyone else is doing. I'm the Program Director at DataFight. DataFight is pioneering data journalism in Nigeria, and it's a civic technology organization pioneering data journalism, the use of data for accountability, and to essentially serve underserved groups, drive policy making, drive decision making in the country. As I said earlier, DataFight is kind of pioneering data journalism in Nigeria, and I have very mixed feelings today, just talking through, looking at this conversation, the context of International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day, everyone, by the way. Because as some of us may know, Nigeria just concluded its 2023 elections, and we kind of got a scorecard for women participation yesterday. And it turns out our National Assembly is going to have just 15 women out of, I just want to get the data right, just 15 women in the National Assembly. We'll have we have 2 women in the Senate, out of a possible 109, and we're going to have 12 women, 13 women in the House of Representatives out of a possible 358 seats. So this for us is, for me personally and for DataFight, is more than the rhetoric of how do we drive gender equality, because this rings home, this rings true to us even now. And some of the work that we have been doing is powering gender data for decision making, for storytelling, especially at the grassroots level. Funny, last year, just on the eve of the celebration of International Women's Day in Nigeria, gender bills on the floor of the National Assembly were shut down, rejected on the floor. It was almost like a happy International Women's Day present from the National Assembly to us. And again, this year, they've decided to package another Happy International Women's Day gift in the number of women participating in elections. And over the course of the year, one of the things that has become apparent is, one, the conversation on gender equality. It's very elite. It's happening just at the central. It's not local. And so the translation of that is that even though some of these things that I'm talking about that is so painful for me, it doesn't even raise a hair at the local level, at the grassroots level. So how do we change this narrative? How do we first make it an issue of concern, make it a conversation that is local? That's the one question. But also, how can civic technology help us to do this? How can we build a technology or use technology to achieve this driving of gender equality conversation to the grassroots so that it becomes a grassroots matter? And one of the ways in which we're doing this is our Gender Media Fellowship. What we had done with the Gender Media Fellowship was first to curate gender data across all 704 local governments of the country, across all the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. And gender data is a very broad term, but essentially in terms of tangibilities, we're looking for every data that has clear connections to gender issues, such as the budget of the Ministry of Women Affairs, for instance, such as constituency project data and how much is being spent on constituency projects, especially those that relate to women and, driving gender equality. But it's also broad in the sense of even pursuing gender disaggregated data. One of the biggest challenges to being able to drive the equality conversation is the lack, just a desert of availability of data when it comes to gender equality. And so one of the conversations that led to this is, how do we use civic technology? How do we leverage civic technology to curate data on one level for storytelling? Because storytelling is powerful, driving narratives is powerful, but also how do we make sure that decision makers no longer have an excuse for their non-inclusive planning, for their non-inclusive policy making, because now we're curating for you a place where you can find the data to do better decision making. And so the first layer of the work that we're doing is curating of this gender data on our open data platform. So DataFight has an open data platform where we are curating this gender data. And again, the hope is that we want policymakers, we want storytellers, media, journalists, civic actors to use this data to tell stories, to use this data to drive advocacy for better policy making when it comes to gender. But as a way to drive use, because I think everyone who has worked with any data, open data initiative will tell you that one of the biggest challenges is uptake of data, even when it is made available. It's usage, even when it is made available. And this is why we took the second step of that fellowship to institute a gender media fellowship. And we were very deliberate about choosing gender fellows who were not necessarily in the center. We wanted spread, and Nigeria is a country with over 200 ethnicities, and just as many languages. And we have 3 core languages, so to speak, the languages that, will be spoken wherever, whatever region of the country you're in. And so we're looking for gender fellows because, again, at the bottom line of driving this gender equality conversation using civic tech, the bottom line is making those gender conversations local so that the demand for equality comes from ground up, so that it's from the grassroots up. It's no longer an elite conversation. And so it would not make sense to simply be speaking to people or simply be enabling storytellers who are in the central, who are in the midst of the elite, so to speak. And so our Gender Media Fellowship chose gender fellows who were working in the grassroots, who are channeling using all of the data that we produce, both on raw data that's available on the open data platform, and also from DataFight's own research outputs. DataFight published in 2020 a Gender in Nigeria brochure that basically analyzed gender data across many indices. And so enabling these storytellers in their localities, we have 6 gender media fellows, and all of them are producing in local languages and using the data that we're able to curate to tell these stories. And so this is the work that we have started. Our hope is that we can scale this program. We're hoping to get to many more regions, but also we're hoping that our initial demand for gender data, for gender disaggregated data, for instance, having elections data, candidates data disaggregated by gender. We want to know how many males are contesting for position, how many females. We don't just want to know the gender identity of the winners. We want to know how many people are participating. What we're hoping that we can achieve, especially because political participation and all of that is so low, is to see just gender disaggregated data of voters, people who actually turn out to vote. And so that helps us too, because there's a lot of anecdotal conversation around, oh, do women vote? If women vote, will they vote women? But a lot of that conversation is still anecdotal. So on one hand, we're curating data that can power policymaking, power storytelling. But on the other hand, our hope is that we're also generating a demand for gender data that is beyond just our own use, but the use for the community as a whole. I think I'll pause here. I don't know if I've exceeded the 5-minute mark, but I think I'll pause here, and then we'll explain more, expand more on the conversation on our work as the conversation goes on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Denike. And yeah, those statistics from the election are very concerning and kind of point to the systemic issues that we're kind of tackling today. So thank you for that. Our next presenter is Gabriella. So Gabriella, please go ahead.
Thanks so much. I'll actually share a presentation just to control my speaking for everybody. Safety. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes, we can.
I'm about to share it with you instead of doing, okay, great. And can you see the slideshow?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, perfect. So I am Gabby. I'm the Executive Director of Open Up. We're a civic tech lab based in Cape Town, and we're very much open data and open source driven in our work. I thought I'd just do a high level introduction to some of the gendered civic technology work we do as a sort of, a very practical introduction to how we think civic tech can advance gender issues and particularly gender data issues. So one of the projects we work on is Code Bridge Youth, which is using data and digital literacy in rural communities, with young people, and we try and actively ensure that the majority of those young people are girls, to become more politically active and not just obviously digitally and data literate. This is done through forming youth councils that engage directly with the municipal government and it's actually being embedded in the formal structures of local government. So it's, I think it's an incredible program. And I think it's possible largely because the conversations around data and digital literacy are often a lot more palatable and appealing to and youth empowerment are often more palatable and appealing to politicians than, straight political activism. So we use that very effectively in our work. We also use young people to actually generate their own data. And I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to highlight that, of course, gender disaggregated and sex disaggregated data is a foundational element of considering how to advance gender through data. But I also think there's a real transformative power in participation in the data generation process. In other words, involving the community themselves in generating the data that is then used to assess their needs. And I think that's sometimes an overlooked, area of empowerment. And so we've done a couple of different kinds of community data collection projects, and I think it's a really powerful mechanism. So we also obviously do a lot of tool development. Some of it, a lot of it doesn't specifically target women and girls, although, there's real ways that we think that some of these tools are empowering for female participation in government, but also other kinds of participation like economic participation, etc. So for instance, we developed Youth Explorer. Youth Explorer is the platform for accessing youth-related data in South Africa. We do that in partnership with both the Presidency and the University of Cape Town, and it's really across a whole lot of indicators and demographics, including economic opportunities. Service point data comes in there as well, and there's really an opportunity to engage with South African-focused youth data that I think is highly beneficial. We have built in partnership with National Treasury Vulekamali. So that is the central portal for all budget information and national budget information, which is obviously a very important part of empowering people in the political participation process more broadly. You can't participate in when you don't know what they're spending. And then municipal money is the municipal level. So that's like our local government, the municipal level data tool for doing that. We've also done some work in doing our own narrative and storytelling with gender disaggregated data. And you can see how useful it can actually be to get this data disaggregated, because it tells such different stories. And so we have developed some stuff on, sorry, I'm having a rough day. Some stuff in unemployment data and just the male and female differences in that unemployment. And I think it's very interesting to look at this stuff in a more finite way, because of course we know that one of the big data gaps in terms of women's lived experience and women's work is that it's not just that the data doesn't exist, but when the data does exist, it's created in a way to tell a particular kind of story. And I think, for example, of the fact that, when we say 58% of girls aren't working, do we really mean they're not working, or do we just mean they're not working in a way that's traditionally defined as viable or as a real economic contribution? We've also done some specific tooling for women's work of interest. We worked on something called Living Wage, which was a tool to assess, whether you are paying your domestic worker a living wage, which is a very big issue in South Africa. The majority of domestic workers, of course, and you see this across care professions, are women. And it is also traditionally a very underpaid profession, a very vulnerable profession. There's There are few contracts in place for domestic workers, and a lot of that instability and insecurity and precarity is directly related to the fact that it's women's work. So this is one of the tools we're doing. We're also currently working on a contract builder to facilitate easier contract making between homes and their domestic workers. We're also working on a project with some partners like Open Cities Lab and Oradev and others called the Africa Data Hub, which might be of interest to Datafy. I'm sure they know about it, and it's looking at regional data for advancing media and data journalism, but we're particularly interested as an organization in the data side of things, and the attempts to get more disaggregated, obviously sex disaggregated and gender disaggregated data where possible, and to explore what the limitations of those are on a regional level. And then finally, I just wanted to close with, I think, an important thing that we sometimes overlook when we're trying to think about gender work, and that is that, we as an organization believe in being the change that we want to see. So I don't think you can talk about what civic tech can do in terms of gender without thinking about what civic tech can do to advance women's rights and gender rights in civic tech organizations themselves. And so we have a three-step kind of process for trying to drive that issue. One is creating the policy that creates, an environment in which women can thrive. The other is to obviously hire women in positions of authority, but also across different streams of work. So you often see that women tend to be hired into particular kinds of jobs, and we like to make sure that there are women across our activity streams. And the other is to measure performance and measure organizationally how we're meeting the needs of women, although we're still really in the process of making that an effective policy. So that's me for now as an introduction.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. And the quote that you had in your presentation that said, "There's no such thing as a woman who doesn't work. There's only a woman who is not paid for work," I think is so powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I hope we'll explore more in the Q&A after this. Next, we go to Karishma. So Karishma, please go ahead. Karishma, you are muted. So if you could please unmute.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be part of this uber awesome woman at this great initiative. Glad to know about the great work that I've been doing by ladies who have talked about the work that they have already discussed. So basically, this is Karishma from Code for Pakistan. A little brief about, since the objective of this program is about how civic tech and open data initiatives can play a role and how we can relate to the gender diversity. So if I talked about the civic tech, so I get to know about this word civic tech from Code for Pakistan, when I was not even part of Code for Pakistan. So basically, I would say that Code for Pakistan is actually a pioneer in setting up and creating an awareness regarding the civic tech spaces in Pakistan, particularly in the areas where there are access to the information and access to technology is very much restricted. So Code for Pakistan has been doing great job from the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, and they have done numerous activities in line with the civic tech and data initiatives, including hackathons, fellowships, different capacity programs, and initiatives that is related to that actually help on the civic engagements and help ease the public service deliveries. So just to be, so we have a list of activities that, but because of the time, I will talk more about that is related to the program objective. So first of the program that we have been running is the Government Innovation Fellowship Program, KP, which is first of its kind fellowship program, which Code for Pakistan has been running with the collaboration of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Information Technology Board and World Bank in Pakistan. So the program aims, what we do it program, basically it combines together designer, technologists, policymakers, civic leaders, who then collaborate on different projects that revolves and that solves the civic issues. We have been done with 8 cohorts at all from the last 8 years. And every cohort consists of uber awesome women who have been working on different problem statements related to the civic issues from the different government department that they have been working on. And they work really hard on bringing and coming up with the solution that actually help the public services and increase the civic engagements in the community. So we have some initiatives that came out of that fellowship program, which I would like to mention is the first is Open Data Portal. So in 2019, Code for Pakistan partnered with the Performance Management on Reform units to draft the country first open data strategy and develop provincial level open data portal for the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The goal behind the open data strategy was to standardize data collection processes and enforce 32 provincial departments and 36 district administration offices to publicly share their data on the open data portal. So this was for the first of its kind, and our female fellows were keenly involved in this particular project on bringing this idea into a real-time solution for the market problem. Then we had certain, this problem does not even just, because in the culture community barriers that we are facing for the females in the community are the most important among it is the mobilization. So the females who were like unable to get the data from these respective government organizations were used to require and used to have the data from open data portals. So it really helped a lot of females across Pakistan and specifically KP to get the required information regarding the departments and 36 administrative offices that have been onboarded on that particular portal. Then we had certain apps that we built, the fellows built. We have Rapta app, again, that was developed in collaboration with the KP Traffic Police Department that offer numerous features like ability to verify license, traffic education, traffic condition, and challan tracking. So we could barely find female drivers in Pakistan. And actually, it is not very common to find a female visit any police office stations or maybe any traffic station. So this app really helped those female drivers who were looking for certain information that they need to know. So the app has more than 50,000 downloads, and it has been a great solution for both the government and citizen in Pakistan and KP particularly. Last but not the least, Rehnuma is actually developed in the first cycle of the KP Government Innovation Lab. That was back in 2014, which was a solution for the KP government with the new approach to make it easier for the people to navigate city information and services quickly. So it was more focused, a citizen-focused website that offered FAQs around government services with a clean and easy to navigate design. So the content was organized based on citizen understanding with the aim to answer question in the simplest way possible for those females who were unable to. The Rehnuma app was more of like you need an expert advice. Rehnuma was there being a savior for all your queries that you need to know about wherever you were applying for. So the challenges that female face as per the research, one that I mentioned was the mobility. Another was access to the market, finding an expert regarding finding a good mentor in the community. Rehnuma was actually covering all those challenges by providing all the FAQs and all the information regarding their queries that they need to have regarding the government departments in the community. And also currently we're working on KP Women Civic Digital Internship Program, first of its kind program where we have onboarded 50 interns across KP from remote areas of KP in Pakistan, who have been onboarded for an internship program, again with the collaboration of the KPITB and World Bank, where they have been getting it. So we have been providing a blended model to all those 50 women from the ICT background who just graduated from their bachelor's, and they have been involved and onboarded on a particular program where we have been providing them a curriculum based on different modules like front-end development, UX, UI designing, quality assurance, data analytics, in different modules related to the ICT fields. They have been guided on that. They have been getting learning mentor sessions and all the mentorship. And then those females are going to be connected with the different government departments to work on the real-time problem statements that is related to the civic tech and civic issues that have been submitted by the government department to us through the fellowship and through the fellow innovation government lab that we have been running from the last 8 years. So these were a few of the projects that actually revolves how civic tech is being greatly contributing towards the gender equality. I would also like to mention that Civic Score for Pakistan team itself is a great example of how we believe in women inclusion, because our team consists of more than 50% women. I belong from a very, I would say, an agrarian background, a very conservative, like a family where doing jobs are not very common for females, but being part of the Core for Pakistan was the reason because of the inclusivity that they have been following in their own company. So the core values of the Core for Pakistan also really enrich the concept of how we are being more focused on the gender equality. So yeah, and we're celebrating Code 10 years. So yeah, I have a lot of things to share about because we have a journey of decades. So yeah, that cannot contribute in this 15-minute session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karishma. And yes, congratulations to Code for Pakistan and yourself for 10 years of incredible work. I'm seeing here that you've helped over 1 million Pakistanis with advanced solutions and worked with over 35 different government departments. So, you know, a great track record. And like you mentioned towards the end there, Code for Pakistan is practicing what you preach with over 50% of women and staff. So that's impressive as well. So congratulations for that as well. Last but certainly not least is Marissa. So Marissa, please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It is really a pleasure to be with you here today, representing Open Heroines, which is an intersectional global community of women and non-binary people who work in the open plus space. What do we understand by open plus space? It's people who are working in, as my colleagues panelists, on open data, civic tech, and open government. We fondly call our community members heroines. So when talking, you will hear me to say that from time to time. We are very grateful to Mar from Code for All, who is one of our very active community members, for the invitation. One of the main features of Open Heroines, it is diversity in terms of regions where community members are located, professional backgrounds, age, gender identity, and so on. So our opinions as a community are not homogeneous. And what I'm going to talk today is just one and my personal opinion. I was asked about the role of civic tech in empowering women and girls and its impact on SDG 5. So as you, I strongly believe in the positive impact that civic tech and open data initiative could play towards gender equality and women empowerment. But I would like to emphasize some projects that our community members are doing to give you examples, as the first panelist was asking to, Adenike, that using data and technology at the community level and how this tech could make a difference in local conversations. First, I would like to mention the work that Janet Champan, who founded Crowd2Map in Tanzania, is doing in that country. She uses open georeferentiated information from satellite images to map roads in Tanzania. And this helps localizing villages where women and girls could be victims of female genital mutilation. This information is later used by civil society organizations, activists, and also by the police, who download the information on their mobiles and use it when they receive calls warning that girls are about to be cut in a village. Janet and her team have trained over 70,000 remote mappers from all over the world to map from satellite images. And then she has trained over 3,000 field mappers to add their local knowledge to these base maps. They mostly use the free smartphone, and here the use of the technology, in an app called Organic Maps. The second example that I would like to bring to you by another community member using open data. And I recently learned this word, this term that while Karishma was talking, I remember, that is factivism. That is the use of data for activism, to make governments and private sector accountable of delivering actions towards gender equality. And I would like to tell you about another community member. She's from Mexico. Her name is Lucia Ixtacuy, and she works for WikiRate in Berlin. Lucia and her team produced a report about transparency in the Mexican fashion brands. And her research found, all using open data, that of the 28 Mexican fashion brands included in the investigation, only 2 disclosed any of their supply chain facilities. None disclosed any address of their suppliers, and none disclosed any facilities beyond the first tier of the supply chain. When you compare this research done at a country level in Mexico to the international edition of the report, which ranks 250 brands, you see that there is a huge difference, because in the international one, 47%, almost half of the brands, disclose their information. This index, used built with open data, is a means to advocate for better labor rights and conditions in the fashion industry in Mexico. This sector, as in other parts of the world, in the southern part of the world, is widely known for their low wages, sexual harassment, pregnancy discrimination, and lack of independent unions, among other irregularities. Sorry. These are examples from our community members that I love. However, I believe that we should not be naive about the just positive impact of both open data and civic tech. And here I would like to emphasize the importance of promoting meaningful and safety connectivity, safe connections. Women and girls have lower access to the internet. They still suffer higher rates of digital violence. So civic tech initiatives should be complemented with traditional offline or typical gender empowerment interventions. And here I would like to tell you about the work that another heroine from our community is doing. She's also from Mexico, and her name is Angie Contreras. And what she does is a wonderful job at schools, teaching girls on how to surf safely on the web by using regular workshops, like going to the schools, talking to them, and more important, she also educates teachers and adults about how to talk to boys and girls about their digital rights. So these are some examples on how our community works using technology and non-technology ways of interventions in order to empower women and girls. I could go on talking to you about how the other ways that, that we interact. We are a group of some 400 women and non-binary people from all over the world. I encourage you to join us. I guess that Mark was going to share our webpage there, and you can download the application form. We really want to grow because the more people we have in the community, the more active we are, the more influence we have. We not only work by supporting our members, but also by raising our feminist voice in other spaces. And just to give you an example, Open Heroines is part of the board who is organizing the next CSB conference that is going to take place in Buenos Aires, where I'm based. And we are working there in order to bring speakers from all over the world to discuss about civic tech from a feminist perspective. I also invite you to come to my country, to my city. It's going to be in the second half of April, and it will be a very interesting opportunity as the one that we are having today to share expertise, to share knowledge, to discuss how we can make a better work with gender equality for all. And I will stop here and will love to hear from the audience if you have questions and continue with the debate.
Renya, are you there?
I can continue talking because there are many other things that I would like to tell you about our community and our plans for 2023.
I think we have Renya back.
Okay.
Renya, you are muted if you are there with us so that we can continue. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out. I do apologize for that. So yeah, thank you for all of your presentations. They were very insightful. And, it's been great hearing about Adenika, the fellowships that you're doing with the Gender Media Fellowship. I think that's very impressive. The tools, Gabriela, that you shared, that you've built to connect with the youth. I think those have been great. Karishma, obviously the work you're doing with Code for Pakistan is amazing. And Marissa as well. That very incredible community of like 400 women non-binary people from around the world. I think that's a great thing that you have going. So I'm just going to share some questions that we received. And I think the first one, which is very interesting to me as a non-technical person, is, how can, people who are interested in contributing to a more equitable world through civic tech and open data initiatives, how can they contribute even if they don't have technical expertise? Like, what are the ways that they can kind of help drive this mission? And anyone can go first.
Okay, so let me jump in and take that question quickly. I think that there are many ways to contribute as a non-technical person. I do not know a word of code. And the fact that I called it a word of code should tell you I'm so non-technical. So I don't code. But you see, it's beyond coding. It's the knowledge that powers the code. It's the projects, it's the design of the projects that power what we build as civic technology. Civic technology is not standalone. I recall writing, an article where I was describing, just talking a little bit about technological determinism and how that technology itself is not standalone. It's derived from, the community and the interpretations of our laws, of our culture and tradition and things that happen regularly. So there are many ways to contribute, even as a non-technical person. One good way to get in at the door is to use, if a civic technology tool has been developed or a data is available, use it. That's one way you can contribute. And if you're asking, where is my platform? Because I think that's one question that I've been, kind of jiggling in my head, kind of, where is my platform? What platform do I have? So yes, you've done beautiful work. You've created the Civic Tech. You've pulled the data for me to use, but I don't have a platform to use this. No one is listening to me. I think that we need to break down what platforms mean in your small community, within your sphere of influence. The very beginning point of getting in the door is to use this data, educate people. There's so much misinformation and disinformation around gender equality. I mean, a friend posted, Happy International Women's Day, and a man, I'm sorry, but had the audacity to say, oh yeah, you're asking for an equitable. What about women who misuse power when they're there? And so it's important, and there is data that talks about, just how much impact women have, how much multiplied impact we have when we have a more diverse power structure. So use that data and educate that kind of person. And I chose to take the very small bits because sometimes it may be challenging to get involved with an organization like Code for Pakistan. It may be challenging to, get a job, so to speak, or be a part of a volunteer community in that broad sense. But you can use that data, you can use that civic technology, and you live in an environment, yeah? You live in a space, and there are peculiarities to the struggles of, just the female gender, or, peculiarities to the struggles of gender equality in your space. How about think of something that can help that space that you're in? Because in my house where I am, I probably do not have the full picture of what are the peculiarities of the challenges that women face. So I made an example to someone today, and he was trying to have a conversation and talking about, okay, yeah, you guys are talking about a more equitable world. What about blind women, And I said, look, we can't discount the conversation around gender equity because there are many layers to it. It's important, and it's in fact good that we recognize the layers that exist. And even though I am not blind, you who is or who live in a community can help me better understand. Maybe I've put out the data. For instance, our gender in Nigeria brochure doesn't have, it's not because there's not just a lot of data collection around persons with disability and the peculiarities of their challenges, equality challenges. So you can point out to me, this is the way you should be thinking about your data collection if you want to be more inclusive in your collection. So there are many big ways you can be a part of it as a non-technical person, but there's so many little ways as well that you can contribute to building a more equitable society.
Thank you so much. That's certainly food for thought. Gabriella, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, like a Luddite, my actual hand up. But what I was going to say, I think, it's not just that non-technical people can be involved in civic tech. I think it's that they have to be. And I think that, like every solution we talk about to the great ills of technology is interdisciplinary teams. And, my teams, they're not technologists, all of them. I'm not, obviously, I'm a lawyer. But no, I'm the head of the civic tech. That's what I am. But, I think they have to be different kinds of skills. They have to be collaboratively designed. They have to be, drawing on different kinds of skill sets and, embedding different kinds of conversation. And so, I think sometimes we talk about privacy by design, but, there's equity by design as well. There's equity by design and impact by design. And actually, I think sometimes what is underappreciated while we have policy discussions is the practical ways we are going to build technology, the processes, the design processes we are going to use to make sure that those technologies serve the people we want them to serve. So I do think it's foundational. Great
point. Does anybody else want to?
Yes, I would like to add something that is just to reinforce the ideas that Adenike and Gabriela have already mentioned, that we are surrounded by technology, we are involved in technology, technology is everywhere, and we are not all techie people. As I mentioned before, in our community, we have people who do come from software development, from coding, but we have other people who come from a policy perspective or from a feminist gender background. And we work all together because all this makes the civic tech more active, more diverse, more powerful. We need to understand the limits of technology and the potential of technology. And as Gabriela was just mentioning, we have to produce equity by design, because from the very beginning of a techie project, of a civic tech project, the bias can come into there, and then inequalities could be reproduced, even if we want even if we want the project to have like the most fair and equal and wonderful impact, if it is not considered in the design the inequalities that it could cause, the people who could be left out, the restrictions that some people could be having in accessing to that technology, the impact could be less or could be detrimental. So having non-techie people on board in civic tech projects is as important as having techie people.
Yeah, so true. Karishma, go ahead.
Yeah. So how the non-technologists can become the part of the civic tech. So again, as per all the speakers, that it's not important to be technologist or a code developer or programmer to be the part of the civic tech. It just, if you wanted to be the part of the change, you can become the part of the motto or the vision of civic tech. So basically, we are a small team and we are mainly dependent on volunteers. So wherever we have been doing, we believe on collaborations, we believe on alliances. So all our projects are strongly based on our great alliances with government, with private sector, with community, with development sectors. So this helps us also maintain the community engagement. It also helps the community to get onboarded, and it's both a win-win for the citizen, and for the organization itself. So we have a lot of programs that have been running. So I'll be just putting one example of the KP Women Civic Internship Program, where we have been running a huge program of mentoring 50 interns. So those 50 interns, we have been getting a lot of volunteer collaborations, like with community like PWIC, with community like different other organizations who come forward, who offer us the solutions that they wanted to mentor our interns. They wanted to provide sessions to our mentors, and we actually appreciate these kind of support from the civic around, or from the people around. So at this platform, I would like to even propose or offer that in case anyone wanted to become the part of the change for the civic good, for the civic tech solutions, or for the community, we are open, and they can reach out at Code for Pakistan social media logins, or our website, or our email. I'll just type down in the chat as well, and they can become the part of the great initiative that we have been working on.
Thank you so much, Karishma. I hope people do connect with you and the organization. So I'm just going to start wrapping up now. And I think, Adenike, you started us off by kind of mentioning that very somber statistic from the election of only 15 women who are elected to legislative positions. But I'd like us to kind of end on like a high note, and kind of look at some of the projects that maybe you feel within your communities or outside your communities that have had the most impact towards achieving gender parity. And I think for me, one that stood out was last year on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this, where every time a corporation or an organization would tweet out Happy International Women's Day, there would be a reply that says, this organization has a pay gap of, this. That was a pretty cool project. So I would like to just go around the room and give you an opportunity to showcase, one thing that has really stood out for you in this fight towards gender equality. It could be your own projects or something different. Adenika, please kick us off.
Okay, very funny that you're asking me this, because I struggled quite a bit this morning because I wanted to find the positive. I wanted to find things that were working, because I just needed some encouragement to know that, it's not all, in the gutters. It's not a dumpster fire failure when it comes to the campaign for gender equality in Nigeria. And there's several people doing very amazing work around gender equality. I can talk about some of the our gender media fellows. One of them runs a program called Silent Voices, and she curates the experiences of women who have faced or are facing gender-based violence. And it's always such, for me, it's the trust. These are rural women. These are not women who are all about, yeah, my rights, I want everybody to know who I am. These are all women who are existing in local communities who come to share their experiences, and they talk through just some of the gems that you get out of that is some of the enabling environment that perpetuates gender-based violence. And the importance of that is for the design of interventions. If we know the peculiarities of how gender-based violence is occurring in different localities, then we can design, whether that's civic tech enabled, whether that's the human interface of it, we can design more responsive interventions for that. I can talk about some of the projects that are curating female sources. Our report card, I think it's Africa-wide, because I know I did a sport media monitoring analysis back in November across 2 media houses across the African region, so East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, and it was dismal. The female representation is dismal, but there are organizations who are curating female sources. There's one such organization in South Africa, and there are such resources. There's an organization called AWIM in Nigeria, Association of Women in Media, and they curate sources so that you no longer have an excuse to say, oh, we don't know what's going on. One of the things that I'm really happy about is, so over the last year, I just kind of handed over as the managing editor of our data journalism platform, and we constantly had to answer the question of female sourcing and how are we inclusive in the voices that are loudest and strongest in our report. And we have made a resolution: no story gets published without a female voice. And we're going to be so this is something that we're starting off, and we're going to be very open about it. We're going to ask our audiences to hold us accountable, to say, hey, yeah, I saw that report, there was no female voice in there, because that's just how much work that needs to be done to bridge this gap. So there are a lot of initiatives, there are a lot of happening, not just at the national level, but at the local level. I am passionate about work at the local level, but at the local level, driving gender equality, driving these conversations that sometimes doesn't just trickle down, except there are people in those local communities making sure that it goes around. So, several ones coming into my head, but I'm going to stop there. There's hope. It's just that we all have to kind of roll up our sleeves. It's an uphill climb. It's an uphill climb, but the view is beautiful, really. We're going to sweat a little bit, probably a few script fingers and knees, but the view at the top is beautiful, and we have to work for that view, for a more equitable society.
Thank you so much. We're running a bit short on time, so if anyone else would just like to quickly share like one project that stood out for them that's really helping.
I could point out just that, I think just on another side of things, one of the most important data projects that we've had over the last couple of years, I think, is that excellent work that Carolina Perez did on Invisible Women. And I think it's really opened the door to conversations about women not being visible in data and the need for sex disaggregated data. And it's research and normative and narrative, but I think it's been very influential and quite foundational.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. We could go on and on, I'm sure. But unfortunately, we have run out of time. So sadly, I'll have to conclude. But what an incredible conversation it's been. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. Let me just go over some closing remarks. Thank you to our panelists and our audience as well for joining us on International Women's Day 2023. My colleague Mar is sharing a few links in the chat. There's a link about the Code for All SDG and Civic Tech series. There's a link for you to learn more about the Women Tech Makers program that seeks to provide visibility, community, and resources for women in technology. There's also a link that's coming shortly for you to join the Code for All Slack community, where I'm sure we can keep this excellent conversation going. And there's also going to be a link for folks to sign up to receive our bi-monthly newsletter from Code for All, and where you can learn about what the global civic tech community is up to. And finally, there is a link for our audience to share their feedback on what they thought of this event. So all of these links, Mar is very kindly posting in our chat box on YouTube, and they'll also be in the description of the live stream video. Thank you once again to our panelists who have been excellent in sharing their perspectives today. Thank you so much to Mar, who has been a wonderful behind the scenes presence for us. And thank you from Code for All. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.